So I've had the new Apple TV for a week now. This is the third generation 4K model that just released in November 2022. I'm a long-term Apple TV user. I use it on a daily basis for all my TV and movie streaming. As well as offering a concise review of this product, I'm going to share some key settings and also compare it to the previous generation to see if it's worth upgrading. So on the left we have the new 3rd gen model and on the right the previous 2nd gen version. Whilst they look pretty similar, there are a few minor changes. Firstly, the new model is slightly thinner and also significantly lighter. The reduction in weight is mostly due to the removal of the fan. On the top of the product you can see that we now only have the Apple logo, with the TV part removed. Overall, this is still a small neat product that won't take up much space in your TV unit. When ordering, you have two storage capacity options, 64 and 128GB. But this year these options also bring another important difference. This 64GB version does not have an Ethernet port, so if you do want a wired connection, then you'll need to step up to the 128GB model. I'm a Wi-Fi guy, so I opted for this 64GB version. I also don't need the large 128GB of storage capacity, as I don't use that many apps. Remember, this is essentially a streaming device, so you don't really store content on there. You'd only need the 128GB version if you plan to download a huge amount of apps and games. So on the rear of the 64GB version, we simply have the power connection alongside the HDMI 2.1 port. Unfortunately, a HDMI cable is not included in the box. Internally, this 3rd generation Apple TV 4K features the A15 SoC. This is a fairly significant upgrade over the A12 used in the previous generation. The amount of RAM has also increased to 4GB from 3GB on the previous generation. In day-to-day operation, the new model is super snappy to use. That being said, I never thought the old model was slow, so if like me you just use your Apple TV for streaming movies and TV, then this new chip won't make a huge difference. However, if you use your Apple TV for gaming on Apple Arcade, then you may enjoy the extra power and performance offered by the new chip and increased RAM. Personally, I have a PS5 and Xbox, so I don't do any gaming on Apple TV. So in terms of HDR formats, Apple TV 4K now has all bases covered. This year HDR10 Plus has been added in addition to regular HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision. HDR10 Plus is a dynamic HDR format in a similar vein to Dolby Vision, which means the HDR is applied on a scene-by-scene basis for the best results. Whilst HDR10 Plus doesn't have the widespread support of Dolby Vision, there is content available on Prime Video, Hulu and YouTube. Of course, you'll need a television that supports HDR10 Plus to use it. Samsung is the main brand that supports this format. Most of the other big TV manufacturers like Sony and LG have opted for Dolby Vision, as that has essentially become the industry standard. Apple TV also supports Dolby Atmos audio and AirPlay, so you can easily view images and videos from your phone on your big TV. The Siri remote control is essentially the same as last generation, but now features a USB-C connection for charging. Unfortunately, a USB-C cable is not provided in the box. This is a really nice remote to use for browsing your apps and content. In the centre at the top you have the trackpad for rapid scrolling and inputs. Then outside of that you have the D-pad that offers more precise navigational control when needed. The mute button works system-wide, so as well as muting my Apple TV, it can also mute my amplifier and games consoles, so this is really the only remote I need to use on a daily basis. On the right hand side of the remote is the Siri button for voice commands and searches. It's worth noting that you can also use your iPhone to control your Apple TV and input passwords for any new apps that you've downloaded. The one thing this remote isn't so good for is gaming. Thankfully you can pair third-party controllers, which will significantly improve your experience. tvOS is smooth and responsive in operation, whilst the App Store has a large collection of apps that should cater for all your streaming needs. Apps can easily be rearranged and organised, folders can be created, just like you can on your iPhone or iPad. I find that Apple TV is far nicer and faster to use than any smart TV. You don't get any annoying adverts. It will also surely receive updates and app support for far longer than any TV. Another key benefit is picture quality. Apple TV 4K uses some of the best bit rates for TV and movie streaming available. I have a 65-inch OLED TV, so I want the best image quality I can get for the content that I watch. I own hundreds of movies with Apple, most of which are 4K Dolby Vision. The relatively high bit rates really do make a difference as to how they actually look. One feature I love are the 4K screensavers that you can download and use with Apple TV 4K. These are beautifully filmed and can be controlled with the remote. Sometimes it's just nice to have these running in the background. It's also a nice touch that you can listen to music via Spotify or Apple Music and keep these screensavers playing. Apple TV gives you full control over resolution, dynamic range and frame rates. This can be useful in a number of situations. Sometimes content doesn't play in the correct frame rate or dynamic range. With Apple TV you can force it to play correctly. The match dynamic range option is useful if you have an OLED TV like me. I don't want the home screen with all the logos to be constantly in full HDR brightness, as this isn't ideal with regards to potential screen burn. So I have the home screen set to SDR with a lower screen brightness, and with match dynamic range on, any Dolby Vision or HDR content I watch will automatically play with max brightness and the correct dynamic range. To conclude, if you're interested in streaming your movies and TV shows in the best possible quality with the best user experience, then I would highly recommend this product, particularly if it's your first time buying an Apple TV or your current model is at least a couple of generations old. If you already own the previous generation from last year, should you upgrade? Well, for most people I'd say it isn't really worth it. The extra power and RAM increase don't really make much difference if you're just browsing Netflix or your movie collection. It might only be worth it if you plan to play a lot of games on Apple TV, as these will really take advantage of the increased performance on offer. However, the vast majority of people simply use Apple TV as a content streaming device, so if you do own the previous generation, you'd be better off saving your money. That's a wrap for this video. I hope it helped you out. I've been Tom Hyphen. Like and subscribe for more. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching.